Hi, my name's Peter Fadde. I'm talking about why a substantial body of research, 40 years of sports science research on perceptual cognitive skills, such as baseball pitch recognition, has yet to really become a routine part of talent selection and talent development at the highest levels. And when we're talking about perceptual cognitive skills, we're talking about skills that start with the eyes, but are also part of the brain. It's not vision skills, but it's not strategic thinking either. It's some sort of combination of perception and cognition that lets a batter, for instance, hit a wicked slider, in this case from Andrew Miller, by recognizing it right out of hand and knowing what it is that's coming his way. Right out of hand, and you know that that's a slider in the zone, and you still have to try and do something with it. Now, the thing is that these type of skills that really differentiate top hitters have been studied in some depth. Here we've got a great illustration by Robert Adair. This is from 2002 of what has to go on inside the mind of a hitter in order to hit that wicked slider. And all we're really interested in is that first third, because that's the amount of time that a hitter has to decide what they're going to do with the pitch, if they're going to swing at it, if they need to adjust their swing. The question really is, what can a hitter know in that blink of an eye? Maybe exertion on the pitcher's face in one study. Obviously, release point, hand angle. It's interesting, for instance, Roger Clemens having credited the split finger with extending his career by giving him, in his words, a fat wrist breaking ball. Meaning he didn't think of the split finger as a change, he thought of that as his breaking ball, but he's not going to give you the skinny wrist breaking ball cue. Of course, you've got immediate release of the pitch, maybe just a moment of the pitcher's follow through. This is interesting, the pitcher looking not at what you would think of at the target, but we would suppose at a spot, a small window 10 feet out in front of him, where he threw his fastball through that came out at belly button height, and where he's now throwing his split finger through, which is going to come out at your ankles. That's a lot to process in 1/3 of a second. Since the early 1980s, sports science researchers, particularly in Australia, and so of course looking at return of serve and tennis and cricket hitting, but also some baseball, have used this technique, this method of video occlusion, to try and isolate and measure this particular perceptual cognitive skill. In this method, the video is cut off, and the participant has to guess what type of pitch it is.
Change it. Good. Fastball.
Now watch.
Fastball. Split. A curve. Split. Fastball. Right.
So you see the mental confusion, almost literally stepping out of the box and knocking the dirt off his cleats, refocusing and getting on top of the three-pitch sequence. So there's your moment of pitch recognition in the laboratory. This very simple method of video occlusion has use then for basic research, also for testing in a systematic way in an organization for talent identification, and for training. On the research end, scientists have studied the pitch recognition ability of minor league players, of players in the Cape Cod League. There, that's what's on the right there is the basement at Orleans, with a paper test of guessing fastball, curveball, changeup, ball or strike. Video occlusion research is primarily done within an expert-novice framework. That is, a group of experts is compared with a group of novices on a pitch recognition test. Now, it's not usually major leaguers versus little leaguers, but it's rather skilled players versus somewhat less skilled. So it might be college versus high school, or minor league versus junior college, or something like that. Enough that there is a marked difference between the groups. And what they show with these studies is discriminant validity. That is, that the perceptual cognitive skill of pitch recognition is completely separate from hitting performance. Just that skill does differentiate whether somebody's in the expert group or in the novice group. And so that validates not only the existence of perceptual cognitive skills as a factor in expertise, but it also adds validity to the method that's being used to test it, in this case, the video occlusion. Now, the next step that we want to get to, because expert novice is not really of much value to a decision maker, or a coach, or an athletic administrator, but what we want to get to is a correlational study that has predictive validity. That is, the score on this test can tell us about something about how that hitter might perform in a context. That has been hard to come by. However, as our host Rob Gray has tweeted, we do now have a just published research study that looks at pitcher game footage as a way to measure visual anticipation, that is this perceptual cognitive skill, in relation to actual batting statistics. This was done with 105 minor league players in 2 organizations. And this looks like a bunch of numbers, but what we really want to draw your attention to is right here where we're looking at pitch type at R+5. That's right at that point of a third of ball flight that we were talking about right from the beginning. And the asterisk is where we see statistically significant correlations. Not really big correlations, but statistically significant. And of course, those are with on-base percentage. We'd expect that. With walk to strikeout ratio, we'd expect that. Negative to strikeouts, because of course, a higher pitch recognition score should be correlated with lower strikeouts. What's kind of interesting from this data set is that we also see at this +2, so where we're looking at pitch type and location, right at this point where it's right out of hand. You remember that sharpest cutoff when you were looking at the Andrew Miller pitch. At that point, people who had the higher score at that point, it correlated with slugging percentage. And this test being done with these minor league players and then correlated for their whole next season's statistics. Now, this becomes something of value to an organization. In fact, this is the same test, the same data, but this is formatted for a team to be able to use. So it's scaled to look something like a batting average. So you can see up there the minor league average is 280. This particular team was a bit over that with 289. And it's also color-coded down here and with a percentile. So a very good pitch recognition score is coded green. A poor one is red, and blue and orange are somewhat in the middle. And we also break down the subcomponents of that. For instance, you can see here AR has a very high score at this kind of magic point of CC that is completely correct type and location right out of the hand. So even though he's just 57th percentile over here, he's a guy who picks that ball really early, and that can give you some confidence as a coach that we might be able to say this is a hitter with good contact skills but not enough power, that we might be able to coach him into a little more power in his trigger and his swing, so to drive that up, because he's got the profile. Doesn't prove that it's going to work that way, but he's got the profile of hitters who are able to pick the ball early and have the higher slugging percentage. So we see video occlusion as a very effective, modest method for basic research, for systematic testing in an organization, and for training of the very skill that you're testing. As the ad says, why monitor my credit if you can't fix it? So this technique can offer all 3 of those levels. When we look at the training level, actually that video that you saw earlier from the year 2000, you can kind of date it by the VHS tapes and the projection TV, it was a training study, and it produced statistically significant differences, and this was with a team. This was my dissertation research 15 years ago, and I had unique access to this team as the athletic department's video coordinator, and was able to have a comparison group and a treatment group. You don't usually have that, and so you don't usually see this type of research reported with actual competing athletes. But here we did, and we did see some, again, statistically significant differences in their performance as a basis, as a result of their video occlusion training. But unless we're going to have people go around and do that by hand, that's not really a training method. So what we finally brought in with the GameSense company is video occlusion reduced to a product, a usable product that can be done on a laptop computer, an iPad or even on an iPhone. The format is still the same. You're going to see a pitch from, in this case, the point of view of a right-handed batter. You're going to identify the type of pitch on the right, and at the same time, with one click, also identify whether it's a ball or a strike, which is an anticipation of whether it's a ball or a strike. So let's show you what that looks like. Here's the pitch, and I guess fastball strike. No, that's red. It's wrong. It shows me it's changeup ball. Okay, I click the replay, and it gives me a little wider view. I've got a little more context, and yeah, that's a nice pitch. If I just swung at that, I'd probably be wearing it on the shins. So you get a score from that. You get a lot of different pitchers. You get the progressive difficulty so that you can build the skill in very much an old-fashioned kind of CBT, computer-based training kind of way. So now we've got something that can be used with minor league teams, with college teams, and even with youth hitters. Start seeing, when can you start adding this into the mix, this piece that we know is involved in very high level expert hitting. When do we start working that in there? Now we do see some evidence in the major leagues of teams shooting this point of view video. That is, cameras that are there just to shoot through the empty batter's box and give you that view that you just saw in the game sense of opponent pitchers. Completely legitimate. It's just another video camera angle that goes on your bats system. If you're checking the Cubs at Wrigley, you can wonder what those little upside down fish bowls are at the back. So what they're doing is they're getting this shot that's then available for their players. I don't know that they're using the occlusion format. As far as I know, they're not. They're simply looking at it as a video clip, but they certainly could do this. So we see that there actually is a fourth level where our triple becomes a homer, where we see video occlusion having application for basic research to understand perceptual cognitive skills, as a way of testing it systematically in an organization, as a way of training at a lot of different levels, including minor leagues, and as a method of opponent preparation. We don't want to confuse these things. We don't want to confuse training and performance support. That's only at the highest level. Otherwise, you're trying to train a general skill. So, with video occlusion being this simple and being this proven and being around for 40 years, how has it not become part of the routine preparation of high-performance athletes in reactive sports like baseball? Well, there are three communities involved who have a role in this, and all of them have also a role in why this hasn't quite connected. On the academic end, the paradigm is such that they do the basic research. They toss the baby over the wall, and the coaches on the other side are supposed to catch the baby and bring it up, and everybody's happy. And all they hear, though, is a loud thud on the other side, because there's not that connection being made. So that's why the Skill Acquisition Arizona conference here with Professor Gray is so important, and why more and more of the sports teams have a sports performance coach and other people who are trying to make these connections, because there's good research out there that can be supported in that. The publishing aspect of it in the academy tends to make academics ask small questions in a very precise way, like the expert novice type research, which is great for validation purposes, but just doesn't have much practical use in sports. So we need ways of pushing it out of that paradigm, of getting beyond the prove it type of research into the improve it type of research. What are the aspects of video occlusion? What are the angles? Is 3D or VR help with that? Now, is it something to do in season or off season? These are all improve it questions, especially for all the researchers who work within a university system. Why is this research not done with the intercollegiate competing athletes? And yet it seldom is. Why are those coaches not pressed to do this type of research? And so, there's a lot of things that can be done on the academy end. On the coaching end, sports psychologists are the ones of this perceptual cognitive, sometimes called sports expertise skills. It's under their area. However, the working sports psychologist already pretty much has their hands full with mental skills, by which they substantially mean psychological skills as opposed to cognitive skills or perceptual cognitive skills. So that's probably not the entry there. The strength and conditioning people, especially as they work into performance specialist type roles, are really probably more of ones to bring that in. They understand the progressive nature of taking something like that and building the skill up. And then there's sport administrators in professional baseball, the GM type level, and they've got to demand the right kind of research. They can't be satisfied with basically a sleep number. Hey, great concept like the sleep number bed. It sounds great. Well, but that's not enough. You're getting ready to not only spend a substantial amount of money, but to get inside the mechanism of your most valuable asset, your players. You want to have good, solid research behind that, and you want to know how to tell the good research from the bad. And there's nothing worse than bad research. It's worse than no research. That's a lot, and I wouldn't expect you to do it. But what I'm telling you is you can trust peer review. Peer review is a brutal process. If you ask any of the academics who are involved in that, myself included, you have to trust that. That's what shows you that the validity is there. That's that validity issue. Then it's up to you to see how does this fit into what we do and what our goals are. On the commerce side, until we can turn these things into a real product, something that sports performance specialists can put into their toolkit, what does it matter? We can't have you in the lab clicking the thing for them. It's got to be some kind of viable product. Now, within that world, that tends to be a startup world. It tends to attract venture funding, and venture funding tends to be attracted by what's shiny and blinky and new, something like an immersive virtual reality, as opposed to something that's proven for 40 years and is just kind of a solid workaday method. So, those get involved into the product development. And a lot of these companies, especially in the technology areas, and we're going into the high performance sports, want to show research, but you have to look at the research is. If it's internal research, it has little value, sometimes less than this, sometimes negative value. Again, the gold standard there has come back to the peer review research article. So we've got these three areas that all have a role in doing a better job, really, of getting this research, good research, even years of it, into the hands of the people that can actually use it to improve athletic performance. And the way we do that, I believe, is by embedding that. And so we're taking these research-based products and we're using them with the authentic athletes in their actual context. Now, we just finished a pilot program like this with a major league organization, and this was with their minor league players, their rookie level minor league players. So first we did the baseline testing in extended spring, and then they were all retested at the end of their short season. And all during their short season, they used the pitch recognition, the GameSense pitch recognition program on computer or on their iPhones, just as a little add-on, because you really can't fit much into the game day context there. So they're just asked to fit in 2, 3, 4 of these minute-and-a-half long drills, about 5 minutes of training on that every game day. Then during an instructional league, a little bit more systematic training, again with the pitch recognition. Now, we have a focus group then with the players to see how that fit into their patterns with the coaches, and we'll produce an evaluation for the team. Of course, that's proprietary internal information for them. But what we can report from that is data that is not the question of, oh, did it work? Did it improve their hitting? Well, compared to what? These were rookie players, so it doesn't make any sense to compare them to last year, even if they were in a second season of short season. Most teams don't want to split up their group and give you control groups and all that sort of thing. So what can we tell? Well, the main thing we can tell was simply, was it used? In this case, we had 3,400 drills done. There's 10 pitches in a drill. That's 34,000 pitches. If we estimate, 3.4 pitches per plate appearance, pretty much major league average, that's 10,000 video plate appearances. with 45 hitters on 3 short season teams, we're talking about 220 extra plate appearances per hitter, about the same number of live in-game appearances that they had. Now, is a video PA worth as much as a live PA? Well, no, of course not. But what does it mean if it's worth 25%? What does it mean that it gives a guy a chance to be able to work on something outside of the game that he might be able to take in on that, and the confidence that they can build into that. We also have the pitch recognition scores, which I told you about with baseline and retest. So the control group that we had, and this was another organization that tested all of their minor league players, 90-some minor league players, both in spring training, the baseline, and at the end of their minor league seasons, and they saw an increase of about 25 points. So some of that is getting used to the test again, and some of it is what you would expect, that this skill would improve in a full season of plate appearances. The treatment group, we'll call them, they were a little bit higher at baseline at 315, so you always want to have a baseline if somebody's showing you these kind of statistics. So yeah, the 360 retest score sounds great, but understand they were a little bit better to begin with. Still, they had a 45 point improvement on the pitch recognition test, the validated pitch recognition test. The question then, and really the purpose of this conference, is can we be better at bringing together not just the theories and the findings, but the actual research methods used in sports science and connecting them up with the coaches and the sports administrators who are actually going to be able to benefit from those. So I invite any feedback that you might have. I invite you to check my professional website, peterfadde.com, a lot of research papers and also conference talks. Please feel free to contact me either with questions or suggestions at peterfadde@gmail.com. And you can check the hashtag pitch recognition on Twitter or join at Dr. Fadde. Thanks very much, and thank you especially to Rob for organizing Skill Acquisition Arizona.